Imagine turning on your computer and feeling like the system is actually working with you instead of constantly getting in your way. From the very first second, everything feels intentional, responsive, and designed around your workflow rather than around ads, forced updates, or decisions made by a company that doesn't know how you use your machine. This is the exact feeling many people experience the first time they truly understand and start using one particular Linux feature. And once you see it in action, it becomes painfully obvious why Windows suddenly feels like it's stuck a decade in the past. The feature I'm talking about is the Linux package management and system-wide update model combined with repositories. On the surface, this might sound boring or technical, but the deeper you go, the more you realize this single idea changes everything about how an operating system should work. It affects how you install software, how you update your system, how secure your machine is, how stable it remains over time, and how much control you actually have as a user. Once you live with it for a while, going back to Windows feels like stepping into chaos. On Windows, software installation is still largely based on a model that hasn't fundamentally changed in decades. You search for a program online, you find a website, you click a download button, you hope you didn't click the wrong one, you get an installer, you click through multiple screens, you uncheck boxes to avoid bundled junk, and then the software installs itself in its own isolated world. Every application updates itself differently, at different times, using different background services, and often with pop-ups asking for permission or forcing restarts. Some aplicativos auto-update, some don't, some break when they update, and some silently install background processes you never asked for. Linux flips this entire experience on its head. In a Linux system, almost all software comes from centralized, trusted repositories maintained by your distribution. These repositories are like massive, curated libraries of software that are tested to work together. Instead of hunting across the internet for installers, you open a single app store or type a single command, and the software installs cleanly, instantly, and without drama. No toolbars, no trialware, no pop-ups, no shady download mirrors, and no guessing whether the site you're on is legitimate. What makes this feel revolutionary is not just convenience, but consistency. On Linux, the same system that updates your web browser also updates your video editor, your programming tools, your drivers, your system libraries, and even the kernel itself. Everything updates together in one place under your control. You don't have 10 different updaters running in the background, each doing its own thing. You have one update mechanism, one source of truth, and one clear picture of what's happening on your system. Now, compare this to Windows Update. Windows Update handles the operating system, but almost nothing else. Your browser updates separately. Your GPU driver updates through another app. Your game launcher updates itself. Your productivity apps update on their own schedule. Some apps require restarts, some don't, some fail silently, and some suddenly stop working after an update. The result is a fragmented mess where no one, including Microsoft, seems to fully know the state of your system at any given time. On Linux, when you run an update, you see exactly what's changing. You can review the list of packages, see what's new, what's being upgraded, and what dependencies are involved. You can choose when to update. You can choose what to update. And most importantly, updates almost never interrupt your work. No sudden reboots. No updating your system. Don't turn off your computer screens that appear at the worst possible moment. No forced restarts in the middle of a deadline. This alone makes Windows feel ancient. But it goes deeper. Because Linux software is built around shared libraries managed by the system. Applications are smaller, cleaner, and more efficient. Instead of every app bundling its own copy of the same components, the system provides them centrally. This means fewer bugs, faster security fixes, and less wasted disk space. When a vulnerability is found in a shared library, updating that one package can secure dozens or even hundreds of applications at once. On Windows, the same vulnerability might exist in multiple apps, each needing its own patch, assuming the developer even bothers to release one. This is one of the reasons Linux systems can remain secure and stable for years without slowing down. The system evolves as a whole, not as a collection of disconnected parts. Windows, by contrast, feels like a patchwork quilt stitched together over decades, with layers of legacy behavior piled on top of each other. Another reason this Linux feature feels so far ahead is transparency. On Linux, you are not kept in the dark. When you install or update software, where it's coming from, what it's doing, and how it integrates with your system. Logs are accessible, configuration files are readable, Nothing is hidden behind opaque interfaces that treat you like a child who shouldn't ask questions. Windows, on the other hand, increasingly feels like a locked box. Updates happen when Microsoft decides they should. Changes are made without clear explanations. Features appear and disappear. Settings move around between control panels and modern interfaces. Even advanced users often find themselves fighting the system rather than working with it. Once you get used to Linux's approach, this lack of control becomes unbearable. Imagine installing a new system on Linux and having everything you need ready within minutes. Your browser, your Office suite, your media tools, your development environment, all installed from a single source. All verified, all integrated into the system, no license pop-ups, no activation nags, no accounts required just to use basic features. Your computer feels like your computer. Now, imagine reinstalling Windows. You install the OS, then you install a browser, then you install drivers, then you install updates, then you remove pre-installed apps, then you install your software one by one, each with its own installer, its own update mechanism, and its own settings. Even after hours of setup, the system still doesn't feel complete. It feels like a compromise. Linux repositories and package management also change how experimentation works. On Windows, trying new software often feels risky. You worry about leftover files, registry clutter, or uninstallers that don't fully clean up. On Linux, installing and removing software is clean and reversible. If you don't like something, you remove it, and the system returns to its previous state. This encourages exploration, learning, and customization. This freedom is why Linux users often discover better tools, faster workflows, and more efficient ways of working. The system invites curiosity instead of punishing it. Then there's the performance angle. Because Linux updates and installs software in a controlled, predictable way, systems tend to stay fast over time. There's no gradual buildup of background services, auto-start entries, and hidden tasks slowly draining resources. What you install is what runs. What you remove is gone. Windows systems, especially after years of use, often feel heavier, slower, and less responsive, even on powerful hardware. When people say Linux feels faster, this is a huge part of why. And let's talk about trust. With Linux repositories, you're trusting a distribution in a community, not dozens of random websites. Packages are signed, verified, and reviewed. This dramatically reduces the risk of malware. On Windows, the act of downloading software from the web is one of the biggest attack vectors, and it's still the default method for most applications. Antivirus software exists largely to compensate for this outdated model. Linux doesn't rely on constant fear. It relies on structure. This is why many people who switch to Linux describe a strange sense of calm. The system is predictable. It behaves logically. It doesn't surprise you with sudden changes or interruptions. It respects your time. Windows, by comparison, often feels like it's designed around assumptions that no longer make sense. Assumptions from an era when users were passive and computers were simple. The most shocking part is realizing that Linux has had this feature for decades. This isn't some new experimental idea. It's a mature, battle-tested approach that has quietly evolved while mainstream operating systems stayed stuck in old patterns. The fact that Windows still hasn't fully adopted a unified system-wide package management model for all software is why it feels so behind. Once you experience this Linux feature, it permanently changes your expectations. You start asking why software installation should be complicated at all. You wonder why updates should ever interrupt your work. You question why control should be taken away from the user in the name of simplicity. And when you go back to Windows, every installer, every pop-up, every forced update feels like a reminder of how outdated the experience really is. This is why so many people don't just try Linux and go back. They try it, understand it, and then slowly realize they don't want to leave. Not because Linux is perfect, but because certain ideas, like this one, are so fundamentally better that it becomes impossible to unsee them. And once you can unsee them, Windows doesn't just feel different. It feels like a system from another era, still trying to catch up to something Linux figured out a long time ago.